We're here for this session of mastering your workflows. So we'll just get started here soon. I'm going to give everybody a minute to hop on and see how things are going. Okay, so let's see if anybody's... Okay, looks like 52 of you are in, so I'm going to go ahead and get going because there's a lot to cover in such a short time. All right, so just to introduce myself, my name is Cassie. I actually am the owner of Your Solution Architect. I live in the Jira environment helping clients implement solutions like the ones I'm going to show you today in workflows and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and dive in. All right. So turn on implement solutions like the ones I'm going to show you today in workflows and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and dive in. Let's take a look here. It looks like I was having some sound issues, so hopefully that's resolved now. I'm not so good at this live broadcasting just yet, so you're going to learn alongside of me and give me some grace here. Okay, so that looks like you guys should be able to see it really good. So I wanted to first talk about how workflows interact inside of the tool and what basically controls these, workflows essentially. And the big thing that, hold on one second, it seems like something is still playing, so I'm going to unjoin my live because I think I was in my live and it's giving me feedback. So hopefully that helps. There we go. Yes. All right. I don't know if you could hear it, but it was extremely distracting to me. All right. So inside of Jira, you have a lot of different things that interact with one another, right? So I want to start at the basics because I always want that foundational understanding to be there for you. So essentially, in order to determine what workflow is getting used, you actually have to attach that workflow to a work type or an issue type if you haven't changed your vernacular yet. So what I mean by that, and we're going to kind of take a peek behind the curtains at a project that I've imported in here. We're going to take a look at these project settings, and we're going to take a look at the different request types and work types that kind of attach to those. So this is a Jira service management project. So you'll see request types here, but in reality, we really just need to take a look at the work types, okay? Because the work type is what defines which workflow is being used. So in a Jira service management project, you can have a work type that has many request types. So the request types are not technically what determines which workflow. Instead, it is which work type is linked to this request type. So if you come in and you kind of look at the service requests, let's just look really quick. You'll see that all of these request types are linked to the same work type. So that's what I mean. So the request type is not the one that determines the workflow. Instead, it's the work type in Jira service management projects. In Jira projects, you don't have request types. So you don't have that added top layer. You don't have to worry about it at all. It's not even a thought in your mind, really. So you're just focusing on the work type itself. So let's take a look at how these work types are, defining what workflow. So first, you need the work type that you want in your project. And then once you have it, you're going to come into your workflows. You're going to take a look to see which work types or issue types are using which workflow by viewing the workflow scheme. So this scheme basically tells you, hey, this issue type or work type is using this workflow. Now these workflows are going to look a little wonky because whenever you do a cloud-to-cloud import, the workflows kind of get jumbled, and I'll show you what I mean. So that one's not that bad. Let's see what this one looks like. Oh, that one's not that bad either. I have another project where they're really bad, so let's look at that one really quick. It's probably the Atlassian service desk. Let me see if I can find it. Projects here. I thought I had it open. Might be this one. Let's take a peek. This one. And I like to start everyone on the summary tab. You just come here, you can see which work types are there. You can come into your workflow scheme really easily, so you don't have to worry about the side panel changing or moving. Let's see. So this one's not bad either. This might be the same project. I want the IT, the Atlassian service desk, but I'm not sure why I don't see it here. Let's go view all projects here. Weird. I'm not loving the new workflows because it really does get me. Here it is. It takes me a little longer than usual to find things. Still, you'd think I'd be used to it, but no. I'm gonna go ahead and start that one so I'm not hunting for it later. And then we can take a look at the project settings. And we're gonna take a look at those weird workflows that got imported. So when you're doing a cloud-to-cloud migration, you are probably going to end up with a workflow that looks like that. So it's not overly helpful that you have this workflow imported because it just looks scary. This workflow should actually look more along these lines. So today in this 101 session, we're going to be kind of recreating this workflow because, to be honest, trying to straighten out all of these lines would probably not be worth it. So let's pretend we're creating a net new workflow for this project. So we're going to come into our Jira admin cog. You do need to be a Jira admin in order to create new things in your environment. So long as you have those permissions, you should have this little section where it says Jira admin settings. And most of your work is going to be here in work items. I'm just going to click on work items. And then on the left, you're going to look for workflows. All right. So we can just start a brand new workflow by coming up here and clicking add workflow, create new. So this is going to be our new workflow. Be a good Jira admin or, citizen, if you will, and make sure you name things in a way that you can find them. To be honest, if they were named properly, I don't even have to go to the project settings. If I'm a Jira admin, I could always come to the Jira admin cog and find exactly what I need. So how I usually do that is I actually name the workflow whatever the project key is. So if we go back to that project, we could kind of look at the project key. This one's project key is actually help. How you know that is either the beginning of the tickets have it. It's also in your breadcrumbs up here in the URL. You can click on the URL and see that. Or if you were in the project settings, it actually does show that as well on the details panel. So actually I'm wrong. This one's ASD. The IT project is IT help. So we're gonna copy that just because they always forget. I'm gonna paste it. And then we need to name this workflow what does it go to, right? So this is gonna go to the work type service requests in this example. And I'm gonna make this workflow have an approval. So I usually create standard workflows. So I'm gonna say standard workflow. And then I'm gonna put with approval. Because I want this one, because it is a JSM project, and in JSM projects we can have approvals. We'll get talking about that in a minute. In software projects you cannot, so we'll discuss the differences there. All right, so I want this one to have an approval. So we're gonna hit create. All right, Now we're basically started with a blank slate. This dot, if you will, is the person creating the ticket, okay? So this create line here is called a transition. So words really matter when you're talking about workflow because the transition has special properties and powers, and the status has special properties and powers, if you will. So the line is the transition, the rectangles are the statuses. And when you're looking at a status, just glancing at the status, its color even means something. So in Jira or in JSM, any of the Atlassian products with workflows like this, you will notice that any status that's kind of like a to-do, like work hasn't been done on it yet, will have a gray color. And how that actually comes about is you can click on the status and you can hit edit. You can actually see that there's something called a status category. These status categories really are valuable because when you are, JQLing to create a filter and automation later, you don't want to have to name every single to-do kind of gate status. So you don't want to have to name, received or whatever the 1 million ones you have in your environment are. And if you're not sure which statuses you have, you're already here in the admin cog panel, and you know that because it says Jira admin settings here. You can actually just go look by scrolling down, and you can open that up. And I'm going to open it in another tab so we don't lose our spot. You can take a look at what category all the statuses in your environment are. So this is one of those big warnings that I want to give you as someone new in the environment that does not typically, come in and action workflows, or maybe you did and you just don't know this. If I change this open status to a different category, that is what I would call a global change. It's going to affect 14 workflows, potentially 14 projects. So even from over here, if I was to come in, hit edit, and change this category, that changes it for everyone in my environment. So I just said that sometimes categories are used for JQL and for filtering purposes. So you just broke a bunch of boards. You could have potentially broken a bunch of automations. Not to mention you've maybe made people's workflows look really wonky and like colors are all off. So do not ever change a in-use category of a status without making sure that the rest of the people utilizing that status are okay with that, okay? So now that we're looking at categories, I just want to show you the other ones really quick. So you have to do, which is going to be gray. You have in progress, which is blue, and you have done, which is green. So when I am looking at how healthy a workflow is, if I'm investigating another workflow that already exists, I might look first to just see if, I'm just gonna grab some random workflow. Hopefully this one has, let's see what this has. I'm looking for something with something a little to it. So I look at this workflow, it looks like noodle soup to me. I don't like how the lines are, but the categories look right because obviously to do is a to do kind of gate. Done, I'm not sure why it's in the middle. It's a little weird. Maybe it should be down here, but done is definitely a green, should be green, and in progress makes sense to be blue because it's in progress. So the first thing I'll look at is, does the categories look correct? All right, so those are categories. They are global. Do not change them unless you have done your due diligence. So let's sit here. I'm gonna, just for my notes, bring this up. So we need request submitted and assigned, in progress, response received. So I usually try to remember a couple. And I do recommend drawing out and getting the workflow approved before you go and build it. Because once you place it on the project, it is hard to make changes to it. You're gonna have to make a copy of it, make changes, and then place it back on the project. So my recommendation is get the workflow process approved, know what you're going to build, and then build it, okay? So let's go ahead and, it was like what, response received. So I like to just type in add status, type in all my statuses, and then kind of just start lining them up in a row. And then I'll move them around once I am happy with that. So assigned, in progress. Oh, so request submitted, response received. Okay. I'm gonna move this off to the side just so I have it over here for myself. All right. And I don't have to keep flipping back. I can just do this. All right, so response received, we have request submitted. It should be assigned, in progress. And you just, if they already exist, you could just select them. Now, if you're going to be creating a new status, you'll notice when I start typing, you'll see that it doesn't exist and you can click new status. Please be careful about naming statuses the same names. You don't also need to say like QA assigned if there's only one assigned status in this workflow. Keep it general. Keep your statuses as general as possible because then everybody can use them and you can use them in any project. So you don't want to create really niche statuses if they can be avoided, okay? So you'll notice that mine can pretty much be used by anyone, and that is really truly the goal when you're creating standardization. Okay, in progress, which should be, all right, should be blue. So we're looking good. All of our categories look like they're set correctly. And then we have some others. We have waiting on reporter, waiting on vendor, and waiting on member. And these are for data purposes with this one. So for data purposes, we wanted to know how long are we waiting on the reporter of the ticket, and maybe we want to fire off some automations. Sometimes we're waiting on Atlassian to help us or some other vendor. Maybe it's a bug that we've raised a ticket. So I actually have them in my drawing this way. So I'm just going to rearrange them. And waiting on member and on hold. Waiting on member was specific to this particular client I built this for. They were a financial institution and they had members. I'm not going to add that to this one. So I'm just going to put on hold. So I don't really need this other status for this use case. So on hold. Beautiful. And then I have two done category statuses I've resolved, and I'll talk about why. Ooh, we don't want the migrated one. It's also a pesky thing that happens when you migrate stuff. It likes to create duplicates, so just bear that in mind if you're ever having to do a cloud to cloud migration. It will create duplicate things in your environment, which is no fun. All right, and then ready for archive. And then we're gonna dive in and start connecting things. All right, and I will tell you, or this could be closed. Either or. I prefer closed. Ready for archive was just the language that that client preferred. All right, so why do I have two done statuses? I don't know if you know anything about Jira permissions or you've looked at a permission scheme at all, but resolved and closed are actually on project permission schemes. So I like to kind of sometimes use these as gates where I only let certain people close the ticket. And I only give those people or those roles the permission to close the ticket. So in my ideal of a best service environment, when we're talking about JSM, is that we verify that the submitter or the reporter of the ticket, that their problem is truly resolved before we close the ticket. We give them an opportunity to confirm or check. So in this kind of example, your service desk team would move the ticket into resolved and say, hey, I believe I've resolved this. Can you confirm on your end? And this allows users to feel like they're completely taken care of before you're closing their ticket, okay? So we might ask, the client or the reporter to, hey, double check if it's good, close the ticket. We might allow from the portal them to close it, or we might only have like a senior team member close it. In software projects, you see this a lot where, QA will be like, or development will be like, we fixed it, we think. QA will go, no, you didn't, and put it back in progress or, rework needed. Or they'll close it if they've verified the fix. So you'll see these gates kind of used a lot. If they bother you, totally fine, you can remove that one. They're not necessary, but they are a way to leverage the permission scheme. So I often do include them. Sometimes I have automation move them to closed. Like in this use case, if the client does not respond, I might have automation close the ticket after so many days. So that's not just hanging around and resolved. All right, so you saw while I was yapping here, I took this create transition and I clicked on it and I grabbed its little ball and I moved it from the open to the request submitted status. So if you already have a transition that's around, the quickest way to move it is just to click on the transition itself and grab its little ball and put it where you want it. Then once this status is freed up and there's no transitions coming in here, you can just remove the status. Cool. So now that one's out of the way, we can start connecting things. So then I'll just drag this up a little bit. And I want a transition to go from request submitted to assigned. So I have a couple ways I can do this. I can just click on the little white ball there and drag it to the assigned white ball. So that's saying it's going from request submitted to assigned, and I can give this transition a name. And a lot of times my name matches what the status name is. But this name that you give, when you're viewing a ticket and you're transitioning it, that is, and I'll just kind of like grab a random story. I have no idea what this is, but, oh, of course it's enclosed. Let's try one that's not enclosed. This is like I just resolved it too. Some random ticket, let's see if I can find. Okay, this one. So when you're, transitioning the ticket, these are all status is not helpful, it doesn't show it, but essentially when you click here, there will be words in front. That is your transition name. So you want to make sure, and I'm trying to find an example to show you. I really just am struggling here because they're all transitions. Oh, there you go. So this is a sample. This is a sample is the transition name, okay? And then it goes to in progress, the status. So when you're viewing this is a sample, is the transition, you see, as we hover on it. So you can call this whatever you want. So that's where you can get more niche. Instead of creating the statuses like send to QA or whatever, you can say assigned to team member, whatever you want. This is the language for your internal team. No one else will really see that. It's just what's there when they click the button. You can also add a description, that will show there for when to transition, like when to use this transition. Like sometimes you might have an automation running. So we could put this as using automation, that type of thing. You can put whatever you want in the description. You can also attach a screen that pops up when the user clicks on this transition to go from one status to another, and they hit transition and it would pop up and they can fill it in. So you could create a screen and you could attach that here. For now, I'm not going to create one for this one. So those are the basics that you have in the workflow itself. Now, once you've kind of drawn all your lines and gotten them all in, I'm going to kind of skip these middle bits for a minute. You're going to eventually get to closed statuses, or you might have one that's needs to be an all transition like we just saw. And what that means is any of these statuses could come into this one. So we're going to make on hold an all transition, because at any point in this, workflow, they might need to pop it in on hold, right? This is where I might desire that the user leaves a comment. So in Cloud, any transition screen, even if it's completely blank and has no fields, will have a comment box. So I have a transition screen in my environment that's completely empty. I've added start date and due date. So I could remove these. And the only thing that would pop up is actually just a comment box, which is really, really funny, but I use it all the time because I just want to make people's lives easier. I want them to be able to transition the ticket and the comments right there. Instead of transition the ticket, scroll to the bottom, leave a comment. They've now changed some features where the comment feature kind of is there. In some environments it's rolled out, some it's not. So if not, you can always use a blank transition screen, which is really cool. And this is going to be important in a minute because we have a resolved status. So I want to draw a line from in progress to resolved, and I'm going to call it resolved. Now, because this is a done status, Jira, even though the category of the actual status is done, there's a magic little field inside of Jira called the resolution field. And this is why a lot of people's boards are broken. They'll be like, why are done items showing in my queue or on my board, And it's because out of the box, it's looking for the resolution field to be empty. I wish they'd change that to status category, but that's just how out of the box it's designed. So to negate that, you have to come in here and make sure that if you don't want resolve to show in the all open queue or in in the open board or whatever you want it to fall off, you've got to make sure that it has a resolution. So how do you do that? When they're transitioning the ticket, you're going to add something called a post function. And post functions here are actually really cool. You could come in and add them very easily by clicking add post function. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit that field. Now this is an issue field, which should translate to you out of the box field. It's not a custom field that you created on your own. It's an out of the box field. So just hit add, check that, or click the box or circle and hit add. And then you're going to come in here and grab the resolution. Now, I like my resolutions to make sense to what's actually happening. So if it doesn't exist, resolutions can be created here in your environment, and they become important later when you might want to fire certain events off of the resolution type and things like that. So I like them to match. It also, when you send an email, it says this ticket was resolved as resolved or as done, or it'll put this resolution field there. So you want to make sure it matches. All right, so we're going to put resolved. You also want to make sure that the event matches what's happening, because like I said, the events are basically the email templates that are going to be sent when this ticket goes from in progress to resolved. It's going to send an email if you have notifications on, and we want to make sure it sends the right notification, so we have to make sure it has the right event. So if it's a resolved, it should be a resolved event. That way they get the appropriate email. Okay, so it should be resolved and resolved. So how I know at first glance that if this workflow is not set up right, and I'm gonna look at this one really quick, I'm gonna hit edit. I just come in here and I click on the resolution, and we're going a little over, and that's totally fine. So if you guys want to hang on and continue watching, go ahead. I'm gonna keep going because I don't have any meetings until 10, and then you can catch up on the video later on the live stream on YouTube. So just feel free to join my YouTube channel and watch the remainder of the video at your leisure. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. But How I check to see if a workflow's health is good or not, I come straight to a resolved status that has a transition and I click on it. And if I see 6, I'm like, okay, the resolution's probably being set because the standard is 5, okay? So I'm like, okay, the resolution, the post function's probably being set, but is the event? Womp, womp, womp. So this one fails the test. It's not sending the correct event notification, which is not cool. Events are basically something that Jira listens to, and when it has the appropriate one, it's gonna fire off appropriate actions like sending the right emails, okay? So we want them to match. So this got a good score for having the resolution, and it's actually from done to in progress, it's being cleared. So I guess this one is fine, generic event. Let's go back, I clicked the wrong transition. Does it not have a, it's just kind of, they're overlapping. Oh, so this one's not even, this one's not, they're clearing the resolution, but they're never even actually setting it. So womp womp, it's not even getting set because this is in progress to done. So first thing is there's no resolution being set, the event is incorrect. So I would give this a 0 score. This workflow is not serving them to their max potential. All right, so ours though, we're gonna make sure it's good, all right? So every time you edit a workflow that's inactive, the change happens straight away. You don't have to make any saves, but you do have to refresh to kind of see them. So if you're worried that potentially you didn't do something right, you can always just refresh and double check. So our resolution is good, and our event notification, whatever you want to call it, is looking good. So, all right, cool. So that's all beautiful. Now we also in this workflow have a status that if this ticket goes to resolve, technically you could put it back in on hold because any status can come into this one. So what happens if, you know, they reopen the ticket and they put it on hold, or maybe we're gonna create a backwards line to in progress because the client's like, actually no, or to response received, actually no, it's not fixed. Can you please try to fix it again? So if we were to draw a line back to response received and make a transition, and here we can just say, maybe we might want to make this one forward facing. We could say issue not resolved. Cool. Beautiful. So now because we're going backwards in the workflow, we need to remove the resolution. Otherwise, it's still not going to show on your board in your open queue or in your open boards. So it's important that if you set the resolution, you double check that it can't go from a resolved, where, you know, kind of done status backwards in the workflow. Because if it can, we need to also wipe it. We need to remove it, okay? We're going to do the same thing. And what's interesting is this is the only way you can remove the resolution field without having it on the screen to edit, okay? You cannot do it really any other way. You have to do it through a transition. Even if you're using automation, you have to have a transition to force the ticket to transition to wipe the resolution. So it's essentially the exact same steps we just took. We're gonna click on post functions, and we're gonna come in here and we're gonna add a post function, which seems weird because we're wiping. We're still gonna update the field, and we're gonna find the resolution field here. And this is the only place you can set the value to null, none. And we're gonna hit add. And it will look like this. Resolution will be cleared. This is important. Also, this is going from resolved back to like an open status. So I wouldn't say this is a generic event. I would say this is like a reopened ticket event. So let's get the appropriate people notified, because with these events, you can also state who gets these emails, okay? So let's go ahead and give it issue reopened in case maybe this service desk manager wants to know how many tickets are being reopened, and they want an alert in their inbox every time something's reopened so they can investigate, if people aren't completing the job at hand. So we want to make sure that it has the issue reopened because it's technically going from, a closed status backwards in the flow. Now, I know that it opens a new tab every single time, but I just click back to my workflow tab. And we're going to do the same thing for on hold. So we're going to do that really quick. Go in, we're going to add that post function. We're going to find update issue field, and we're going to wipe it. Let's remove the resolution by setting it to none or null. Beautiful. This is also reopening the event, or we could give it the on hold event. It's really up to you. And if you don't have an on hold event, you can create one. So if this one doesn't have one, it's almost always the first event that I create in an environment. So if the event that you want isn't there and later you want to action a certain something off of that event, totally fine. You can create events in your environment, but it's actually not here in the Jira workflow, Jira admin settings. It's actually a global system setting. So it's still in your Jira admin, so you just need to be Jira admin to get to this, because anything in here. So let's open that in a new tab. We're going to come in and we're going to find events, which is at the bottom. And we're going to add an event because we should have that on hold event. So you'll see a lot have like system next to it. These are just out of the box ones. So let's add on hold. You can add a description if you want, totally up to you. I think it's kind of redundant. And then you have to select the template. And what that means is that email template. There's only so many in your environment. So I usually use the template of work stopped for this this particular example, because when something's on hold, we're not actively working it. So I think this is the closest template that would make sense. Okay. Awesome. And in cloud, the templates are what you have. You can't create new templates. I don't think they've added that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but there might be an add-on or something you can purchase, but you get what you get out of the box with cloud, which is cool. So now that we've added that, we will have to refresh in order to see it when we're trying to configure something, so we can come back into this on hold section and we can go ahead and edit the event to that new event that we just created, which is pretty nice. And I want to show you how these events really matter, and it will always create it at the bottom. And unfortunately, if you're neurotic like me, you cannot drag them into alphabetical order, sadly. They're just kind of here, and you can't adjust their order and put them in alphabetical. I've tried. So let me find my tab because I didn't finish or hit save, I don't think. Okay, so let's hit. I exited out and then it didn't update it. So let's see. Okay, update. Now if we refresh our transition, we have that on hold. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go really quickly and I'm going to just draw a couple of the other transitions just so we can kind of get this moving. So assigned might be special too. You might want an action to actually happen. It's actually going to in progress. My bad. When it's assigned. So in this assign transition from request submitted, we might actually have something happen. So I always just click on post functions because it's habit, but once you click in there, you can kind of investigate the little tabs to see what different things can actually happen. So you can select a condition, and let's kind of look at the condition. So we might want to allow only the, automation to kind of do this transition. So say we have an environment where everything is auto-assigned, right? We don't want users to beat the auto-assigning automation and move the status, okay? We might want to just completely hide this transition from the users altogether. You can do that by clicking hide transition. So that won't be available on the selectable list, but your automation will still be able to, transition the ticket. Or you could say different use case. Instead, I want to check if the assignee field has been filled in. We could do that. So you can say the assignee field is required before you can move this to assigned, right? Totally fine. You could do that by just clicking that and hitting assignee. Always put an error message. Don't confuse your users. You could have it like that, and you can have add. All right, so once you do that, in Validators, you're gonna have a number one. It's gonna tell you what it's checking for. You can have multiple validators. Now, what if instead of checking to see if it's filled in, instead maybe your users, just when they click on it, the person clicks on it, they want their name to go there. You could also add a post function to fill in the field. So you can actually update the issue field assignee, another way to use a post function, and you can do the current user or trigger user. You can use smart values here. You could do all sorts of things. You could do automatic. You can leave it unassigned, like clear it. Maybe you want it to wipe, things like that. So there's a lot of power that can be had here in your conditions, in your triggers, and in your validators. So really get in and kind of, just get in and play around and, look at what is available to you. Yours might look different. You might have different options. If you have any add-ons, you might have extra validators or extra post functions that you have on your list. You might have extra conditions. So just kind of read them and get to know them. For conditions, you can even say, remember I was saying we could use a permission scheme to block certain things, but you can also use a condition to do that, which is pretty cool. You can also use a condition to make sure that someone doesn't skip a status if you wanted, all sorts of things. So it's really, really powerful, these workflow configurations. So just always take a look at what's available here before creating an automation. You might be able to control it here in your workflow in a way easier way, okay? All right, so let's jump back, and I just need these all to kind of have a transition of some sort, because I was going to show how to do an approval, because you can't do approvals in Jira software, but you can do them in Jira Service Management, and they're a big reason why. So let's make sure you can get out of on hold, because right now you're stuck in the on hold island. There's no way out. So we'll put it to in progress. And I like to reuse transitions. So if we already have have an in progress and they want all of the transitions to this status to follow the same rules, or at least this one to follow the same rules, I would just reuse the transition instead of creating a new one. So now when I select one, it selects the other one. And if I make a change to one, it'll make the change to the other, okay? So I use this a lot for like, you know, resolve statuses or closed statuses. So I don't have to keep putting the resolution because I always want that to happen, right? And I usually do change the resolution to closed once it moves from resolved to closed. So I'll just do that. And I'm going to move a little quicker because we've shown you this one a couple times. Beautiful. All right. And then we'll just put, all right. I cannot type today. Beautiful. And for all of the waiting ones, I do really like to add that comment screen because I really want to know what we're waiting on. Or I might have a vendor screen where they have to put the ticket number to the vendor portal so that we can, if they're on vacation, we know what the ticket number is. We can maybe monitor that ticket as well. So it's really helpful to create transition screens there. Now, right now, waiting on vendor, it can't go anywhere. So we got to make sure everything has an in and out, basically. And we're going to reuse the transition again. Oh, nope, we don't want the issue not resolved one. Let's delete that one. We want to reuse them, but not quite that. I don't think we have a response received one yet. So this just makes it so you don't have to set those post functions twice. Also, you don't have to figure out which transition to use. If you're using an automation, you have multiple transitions into a status. You might have to use the transition ID, which I'll show you how to find that really quick. You're just going to come to the text version of this workflow, and the transitions numbers and IDs actually show right here for you. So the status ID is 8. This one's 2. And then the transition ID is 61. So how to read this. So your step or your status is going to have its number next to it. And so if you did enter an environment where there's multiple of the same status, which is, you know, you can clean that up for them later, but you still need to do what you got to do. You could come in and just take a look at which status number and point your automation to looking at that one, because it might not work if there are multiple. Same with transitions. If you have multiple transitions going from one status to another and your automation isn't using the one that you want, you're going to maybe have to call out its transition ID. And this is how you find it. Just go to the text version. Also, when you're clicking on this status and you hit edit, it might show you in the breadcrumbs. Sometimes it does. Oh, I don't know. Let's see. No, in this example, I don't think it does. No. Sometimes it's in there. Sometimes it's not. It just really depends. Maybe when we click properties, it might. Keep saying 20. So 20 might be assigned. Let's go look in the view number. But the quickest way is coming here. So assigned. 4, I know. Yeah, so you'll have to come here. It's not in your breadcrumbs for you. But most of the times you can find the ID of something by looking in the URL and kind of peeking. But it doesn't work for the transitions or the statuses, apparently. All right, so let's just give these guys an out. Make sure everything can, get somewhere else. We're going to reuse the response received one. So anytime the reporter comments, maybe we might create an automation that makes it go into response received. And then we might want to be able to take it from there to in progress. So we'll just kind of like do it like that. Beautiful, good enough. All right, so now that we have this status or this workflow and we're happy with the statuses, we've put our conditions, our validators, our post functions, all of that jazz in and made our workflow really powerful. We need to put it in our project. So let's wrap this up by doing that. So we're gonna put it in this ASD project. So I'm just gonna copy this. We're gonna go back and we're gonna make sure we're in the Atlassian service desk. And like I said, if you're new, just start in summary. It's just so much easier to find things quickly. Come in here, scroll down, and find your workflow scheme. Click on your workflow scheme, and then you're gonna hit add workflow, add existing because we've created it, and now we're gonna look for that. So mine should be pretty much at the top because it's alphabetical. So it should be this one. If you're not sure, you can kind of see when it was last modified. You also get like a little sneak peek so you can like zoom in, make sure it's the right version, all that. And then once you're happy, you hit next. And now here's a big question, like which of these work types are going to use this workflow? So I'm just gonna select them all for giggles because that other the other workflow just looks terrible. And we're not actually using this project, just for demo. And once you do that, it looks like it's done, but because this still says publish, no changes have been made. So make sure you hit publish at the top. When you hit publish, it is going to ask you when you're switching statuses, if you're removing a status or creating a new status and it doesn't exist anymore, it's gonna ask you in the old world, it was these were the statuses. In the new world, what does this equal? So ours are pretty close. It's just on hold migrated is here, which is really gross. And we have resolve migrated. So we're gonna change those. More information needed. So we're just gonna we don't really have that. We're gonna put in waiting on vendor. We don't have an approved because we didn't kind of put that on there. So once you get it all mapped out, you're gonna hit associate, and then it's gonna re-index and it's gonna place that workflow on there for you. I'm gonna abort because I wanna show you something with the approvals, because you have to have the workflow associated in order to set approvals up in the workflow, which is kind of like good and bad. I guess it's because Jira doesn't know whether you're using an Atlassian product that is Jira or if it's Jira Service Management until it's in the project. So now that this is in a service managed project, we'll actually be able to like edit this workflow. And this is the old one, so it's gonna look all gross. And we'll be able to kind of, I'm just gonna move these around so you can see the statuses that I want you to see, which is gonna be approved and pending approval. So disregard the mess. I'm just gonna get all these out of the way. All right, so once you have that status and the workflow is in the environment it needs to be, you'll actually see an additional checkbox that you didn't see before. So remember how we did the all transition? By clicking on the status, we clicked allow all. It's in the same section, but it just only appears once you are actually in that environment. So if we click on include approval steps, it's gonna ask a couple things. It's gonna ask how many people are the approvers? Do we need one? Do we just need one person? Do we need everyone in the group to approve? So you're gonna select whichever one goes, with your kind of situation. So if I want all managers to approve this and I'm gonna like link it to a manager group or a field with those, I might select everyone. So I just put everyone, and then the approver source can be a field or services, which is cool. So I use the Jira fields a lot, and that's those user select or picker fields, as people call them. You can have a multiple user picker field, which is where the everyone comes into, or you can have a singular one. So when I select everyone, I could still put a single user picker. So I could put just one improver or a group, things like that. So I might have a group created that I can do that with. Or I might want just that field, and we'll just put it on approvers. So anyone in this field on the ticket, they've selected those users. I'm saying that all of them, everyone in there, have to approve it. If I only want one, I can just say specific number, and I can select the number one. So maybe they list 10 people, I just need someone to say yes, we could do that. Then once you're happy with what you've done, you need to then say, once it's approved, where does this ticket transition to, okay? So then you'll select the status. Once it's approved, I want it to go to the approved status, and once it's declined, I want it to go to the declined. If I want to say the person who reported the ticket can't also be the approver, I can also do that here. So maybe the assignee can, or the reporter cannot. So let's say reporter. You can say both, So you can hit add. So that is actually how you make the change. But remember, now that this is live, the change isn't actually live until we publish the draft. So make sure you hit publish draft. If you're worried that you might have made a mistake, you could create a backup of the original. And if I create a backup, I don't like this copy of, this drives me crazy. Instead, I like to put a date. So this is a snapshot of time when this workflow was pulled, and it was pulled on 9/10. And, then you can just leave the workflow name, or you can add 9/10 to the back, so you can find the workflow again more easily. So you might do 9/10 like that, and hit publish, and that's going to create a copy of that workflow that we can go and view later, or roll it back to. So if we wanted to roll it back to that 9/10 workflow, we can totally do that. It's really easy to see right there, and we have it ready to go. So put your date, day, month, year, whatever suits you, or maybe you change this because of a service request ticket that came in. Maybe you're like a solution partner like myself. I often put the ticket number on the copy, and then after a while we clean up the instance and we just erase all the copies, and this just lets us roll it back really quick to what it used to be. It's pretty cool. All right, so that concludes what I wanted to cover today. There is so much more I can talk about with workflows, but this is enough to get your feet wet and get you in, and get you working and feeling really confident. So let me go ahead and say goodbye here. So it's really good teaching you guys, and feel free to leave comments of other questions you might have about workflows, and I'll be happy to maybe create a video surrounding just that topic, or reach out to you and we can chat about it, okay? Well, take care until next time. Bye.